Good afternoon, everyone. So, this afternoon, I'm going to present my study, The Cultural Dance Preservation of Inagta, Sano, and Cambuhat, Benavista, Bohol. Researcher and presenter, Maria Chari Anyana. Cultural heritage is essential to protecting one's identity. As the U.S. Embassy in the Philippine states, it brings an irrefutable connection to the past, to certain social values, beliefs, customs, and traditions that allow us to identify ourselves with others. Meanwhile, according to UNESCO's major program 2014 to 2017, some of its strategic objectives include protecting, promoting, and transmitting heritage and fostering creativity and the diversity of cultural expressions. Cultural practices are the manifestation of a culture or subculture, especially in regard to the traditional and customary practices of a particular of ethnic or other cultural groups. Lawrence 1999. Culture as a way of life exhibits beliefs, traditions, and behaviors through cultural practices. The Inagta Sano is a mythical dance. The Agta is a famous Filipino mythical creature with skin as black as charcoal, performed during the oysters planting season from August to December, and they were expected to be harvested in June. Inagta Sano is derived from two Bulanon words. The former means to be Agta-like, while the latter means to mingle and befriend. Thus, the Inagta Sano is a dance to acknowledge the Agta's efforts to protect the Talabahan from pests and human threats and befriending them as well. Inagta Sano was initiated and was formed by Kambuhat Enterprise Development Fishermen Association or SEDFA during their workshop in cultural presentation year 2018. The dance is still being performed today. However, it is only being used as a form of entertainment when tourists arrive in the oyster farm. The researcher believes that preserving this culture should be a priority while Barangay Kambuhat is progressing its main source of livelihood. Furthermore, the researcher is aiming to initiate an in-depth study to preserve the dance for future generations and understand its essence to oyster farmers. The research this research is intended to better understand the significance of Barangay Kambuhat's dance and culture and its preservation along with its livelihood. Specifically, it sought to determine the answers of the following. What are the preparations before performing the dance? What are the training they have undergone? What are specific guidelines to follow in performing an Agdasano dance? What is the significance of performing in Agdasano in the life and culture of oyster farmers? And how would Inagdasano dance be preserved and developed to help sustain culture and its essence in Barangay Cambuhat, Buenavista, Bohol? Review of related literature. A research by Rokayanti and Triwardani in 2013, 14, and 15 on the Banharharho village in the Kulon Progo Regency, Indonesia, investigated on the village's capability to preserve their traditional dance culture. It confirmed that village is indeed capable, but it still has its limitations. They often perform their own version of Hatilan dance that depicts royal warriors waging war against their enemies during wedding events, celebration of Independence Day, or any performing arts event around the village area. However, the practice has diminished over time. One of the factors is the number of young people seeking work and better schooling outside the village. Furthermore, lessening the number of dancers. Another factor is the lack of a strong foundation in teaching the dance. As per Rokayanti and Tiwardani, it is important to have research on the preservation of local cultural arts to strengthen national identity and harmony. In their study, the village dancers only know the dance but not the real purpose of it. In addition, their dance instructor is from a neighboring village. The dancers are merely taught on the dance and not specifying this not specifying on the specific name of the movement. Lastly, the lack of documentation also affected the preservation of the dance. This study produced a model of preservation of the culture of Hatilan dance through audiovisual and educational videos that can be used to teach students in schools and educational media to center the curriculum. Rukayanti et al. 2019. According to the UNESCO United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization or UNESCO, intangible cultural heritage or ICH are traditions of living expressions inherited from our ancestors and passed on to our descendants, such as oral traditions, performing arts, social practices, rituals, festive events, knowledge, and practices concerning nature and the universe, or the knowledge and skills to produce traditional crafts. According to a Manila Standard article in March of 2021, there are 10 video documentaries produced by National Commission for Culture and the Arts, or NCCA, that feature Philippine ICH, example, the Igal dance of the Sama people of Tawi-Tawi and the Buklog ritual of the Subanen of Zamboanga Peninsula. Produced from 2018 to 2020, the documentaries are attempts to provide valuable information on and hope to generate a deeper understanding on the threatened heritage and provide valuable information, and the more an ICH element is in danger of vanishing, the more it presents challenges, especially in the terms of accessibility. Manipon 2021. The related literatures above mentioned share a common denominator, that is the use of audiovisual media to preserve the respective cultures. This supports the research on the preservation of the Inagta Sano dance, as there is still a need to prioritize documentation of the dance along while developing the dance steps. Thus, this is made for the preservation for the generations to come in respect to Philippine heritage and culture. Research methodology. The researcher used a qualitative method of approach. The study utilizes a semi-structured interview to assess the Inagdasano dance of oyster farmers in Cambuhat, Buenavista, Bohol. A semi-structured interview design is used to select group of people in Cambuhat, specifically oyster farmers, in which they are interviewed by the researcher pertaining to the Inagdasano dance. Moreover, the data will be gathered and will be presented to Kambuhat Enterprise Development Fishermen Association, or the SEDFA. The locale of the study is in Barangay Kambuhat, Buenavista, Bohol. The participants of the study were performers of the Nagtasano dance, which are also oyster farmers. This study utilizes a semi-structured interview to gather data from the respondents along with the basic interview structure. This will provide flexibility to the researchers asking the questions. Other questions may possibly be added on some circumstances. To note, the researcher and the participants were practicing safety protocols. Oyster farmers will be interviewed by the following questions. What are the preparations before performing the dance? Before they became a performer, what are the training they have undergone? What are the specific guidelines that they follow in performing Inagdasano dance? And what is the significance of performing Inagdasano in their life and culture of oyster farmers? The researcher coordinated with the local government unit of Benavista and Barangay Kambuhat, as the former will ask a formal permission to conduct a study and interview the Inagdasano performers. The respondents of the group during the interview will serve as the data and basis. Subjects' response to the interview will be gathered to the researcher in order to identify and preserve the Inagdasano dance. Suggestions regarding cultural dance preservation will be presented. In analyzing the collected data, the researcher will use the thematic analysis, a method of analyzing data from interview transcripts. This method is crucial to the study as the researcher will examine data to determine common themes such as ideas and patterns spoken repeatedly. This is considered a foundational method of analysis that need to be defined and described to solidify its place in qualitative research. Braun and Clark 2006. Braun and Clark stated that there are six steps in utilizing this analysis: familiarization, coding, generating themes, reviewing themes, defining and naming themes, and writing up. In familiarization portion, after writing or transcribing the text, the researcher will immerse herself with the data and get familiar with it before interpreting data. Coding will highlight sections to the text and come up with the shorthand labels of codes to describe the content. Next, the researcher will generate themes or identify patterns by combining codes into themes. Reviewing the themes will make sure that they are useful and accurate presentations of the data. Then, the researcher will define and finalize the list of themes and define each. Finally, the researcher will write up the analysis of data, including results, findings, conclusions, and recommendations. Before the statements below or the following are the statements of the performers in regard to the preparation, formal training, guidelines, and significance of the dance. Preparations in performing Inagta Sano dance. The participants prioritize the importance of preparations before the performance. For the dancer, I'll cover my whole body with the mud from the river. I use nipa leaves as my garment for my lower body. For the paddler's preparation, I'll make sure that the bangka and my paddle is in good condition. I also make sure that we are already positioned properly from start to finish. I wear a black long sleeve and black shorts to blend with the dancer. Drummer's preparation. I am in charge of securing a makeshift drum made out of plastic container. I use drumsticks made out of ipilipil wood. I also wear all black as a costume to match with the color with the other performers. For the training. For the dancers, I haven't undergone for the dancer I haven't gone undergone training nor we have any formal practice. The dance is freestyle in nature. My dance movement depends on the drummer's beating pattern. Paddler. I learned paddling because it's essential to our livelihood since I and my family are oyster farmers. Drummer. I managed to practice my own. I base it on a festive beat like the Sinulog dance. During the dance, I also look at the dancers' movements to be synchronized with each other. Guidelines in performing Inagta Sano dance. For the dancer's guideline, I have to cover my entire body with mud and nipa leaves as my lower garment without people seeing me doing it. After our performance, I need to exit together with the paddler and drummer to somewhere secluded as well. I hide somewhere hidden both before and after the dance so that people wouldn't notice my identity. Paddler. I am in charge of the bangka and get on track on the route from the starting point at the Ecotourism Center in Barangay Dait Norte to the Ambacan or diving spot where people gather to witness the performance. The tourists will also ride a bangka. Then we and the other bangka will meet halfway at the Ambacan. For the drummer, together with the paddler and the dancer, I will only start beating the makeshift drum when we have reached the Ambacan. Significance. The participants share their opinions regarding the importance of Inatasano in their own lives and in culture as a whole. For the dancer, although we are befriending the Agda, it is still a superstitious creature as it's hard to show evidence of its existence. The dance has a deeper meaning. In relation to the oyster farm, it is a presentation of thanksgiving as there is abundance of resources. It is like a symbol that we are thankful because we are guided by a loving divine being who has provided us good health and harmonious relationship in the family. For the paddler, the Inagta Sana will be a big boost to our daily earnings. We'll be able to sell more of our talabas. Therefore, it can sustain our family's needs. For the drummer, this is a way to improve Barangay Kambuhat. People will recognize its wonder and soon they will encourage other people to come over here. In respect to the cultural relativism theory, there could be no right or wrong when it comes to believing one's culture, as culture is a basis of people's way of living and way of celebration. Oyster farmers of Camboat Benavista Bohol are a living proof that culture can be celebrated by any means. For them, Inagdasano is way of thanksgiving of the resources they receive. Cultural relativism strongly suggests to better understand certain cultural practices in its own context. Thus, it refers to not creating a judgment towards a cultural based on a cultural standard of what is right and wrong. Boas, 1887. The summary of findings. The researcher found out that there are only limited number of performers from the entire Oyster Farmers Association. One dancer, one or two paddler, and one or two drummers per performance. Preparations. Performers' preparation is not that long since their costumes and materials to be used are already available and are also improvised. Dancer uses mud to cover the whole body to be acted like a nipa leaves as a lower garment. Paddlers, since their family are oyster farmers, he can use their bangka when performing the dance and there is no need to make a new one during performance. The drummer uses makeshift container to use as a drum and an ipil-ipil wood to be used when striking. Basically, the performers prepare their materials and costumes in their own. As the community of oyster farmers don't have much of the budget to purchase the materials and costumes to be used or prepared during performance when they have it improvised. Training. There is an absence of formal training, documentation, and records on the preparation and technicalities of the dance. Thus, the performers were merely informed on what to prepare and do their part during the dance. Performers' guidelines. They have their specific guidelines in regards to their role in the performance. Drum dancers must cover his whole body with mud in a place where people can see him. Nipa leaves as a lower garment since there are a lot of nipa leaves alongside of the river. And before and after performance, dancer must be hidden somewhere that people can see his identity. Paddler will be the guide as to where the performance would be and the controller of the bangka to prevent from sinking. Drummer makes sure that they are synchronized with the dancer. He is also the responsible to make the performance lively. Significance of Inagdasan. Dancer thought that Inagdasano is a representation of thanksgiving of the abundance of resources and be thankful for the guidance of living divine being who provide them with good health and harmonious relationship of the family. Paddler believes that Inagdasano can help sustain their daily needs as this will help to sell more of their talaba. Inagta Sano is a way to improve Barangay Kambuhat's wonder and will encourage tourists to visit and witness its beauty and culture, as the drummer's statement. Conclusion. Inagta Sano as a means of livelihood helps the oyster farmers support their daily needs by boosting its sustenance through the dance. Inagta Sano also enriches culture that encourages tourists to come and witness its uniqueness. The researcher believes that cultural preservation must be a priority in order to preserve the Inagta dance for future generations to sustain oyster farming and its culture. Furthermore, it would include the preparations, processes, and guidelines when performing. Advertising would also be included as it would strengthen the awareness of the dance. Culture as a way of life exhibits beliefs and traditions and behaviors through cultural practices, and this should be preserved. Recommendations. Culture reflects the beliefs and values of the community's unique identity. Thus, culture needs to be preserved and live on to the next generation. Inagta Sano is one of the Barangay Kambuhat's unique culture as it reflects on their belief as an oyster farmers. The beauty and the purpose of its existence serves as a thanksgiving. It is important to have a research on preservation of local culture arts to strengthen national identity and harmony. Rokayanti and Tiwandani 2019. Here are some of the researchers' recommendations in order to improve and preserve Inagdasano dance. In terms of costumes, the paddlers and drummer will also cover their whole body with mud for the uniformity of all performers. Makeshift drums and ipal-ipal wood sticks will remain as one of the materials to be used to maintain the dance authenticity. Encourage more performers to join the Inagdasano dance and educate them on the importance of the dance to the community. Researcher believes that every person has its own way of expression, so researchers suggest that dancer would still have their own dance movement, or also known as freestyle, to express their thanksgiving for Inagdasano. Researchers suggest to the SEDFA, the Kambuhat Enterprise Development Fishermen Association, to have a documentation of the preparation, costumes, and guidelines when performing in Agtasano, in order for the next generation performers to maintain its authenticity and uniqueness. The researcher also suggests to invest time on advertising Inagta Sano dance through social media like Facebook or Instagram, where they post new updates of Inagta Sano and for tourists to visit Barangay Kambuhat. The researcher suggests to the local government unit of Buena Vista to have a budget allocated to start archiving official documents and records that will provide information to the tourists and other researchers. So thank you for listening, and that's it for my research about cultural preservation of Inagda Sano in Buhat, Buena Vista. Thank you.